transmitting high atop of Florida's altitude of 108 feet. It is my pleasure to bring you episode number 90 on Raider Cop Nation. I am Alpha Mike, your host. On today's show, our theme is The Grim Reaper. And this is a continuation of the Wiseguy series that we're doing on Raider Cop Nation. It's an interesting story. I found a lot of fascinating facts in this story while doing the research, and I can't wait to share it. And we're going to get with that in a minute. Of course, if you need to get in touch with us, it's as simple as going to RaiderCopNation.com. And it's that easy. Of course, once you go to the page, you scroll down, the icons pop up, the Twitter, the Facebook, the Instagram, and so forth. You can connect with us there and be a part of the Raider Cop Nation. Our numbers on the Raider Cop Nation is getting higher and higher. And we really had an explosion this last episode. So a lot of interest from a lot of people. So we thank of the listeners and for tuning in. Today, the Grim Reaper. Interesting story. We've gone from the Bonanno family to the Gambino family, and now we're headed towards the Colombo family. Of course, after this, we're going to take a little breather from the Wiseguy series, and we're going to another series, which is going to lift you up as well. But we have a big show today. But without any further ado, let's bring on the Wiseguy quote of the week. This week's quote comes from us from William Balsamo. I want to kill this degenerate bastard brother of yours, but I'm not selfish. I don't want to deprive you of that honor. Quite fitting for the Wiseguy series that we've been doing here on Raider Cop Nation. That's a fact of life. This sacred, honored society of wise guys kill best friends, family members, it doesn't matter. And they all cover it up with one proposition, and that is, it's only business. We have fascinated our listeners with aspects of the Bonanno family, the Gambino family, with Louis Ippolito and the Mob Detective series. And now we're dwelling into the one and only Colombo family and looking at the interest aspects of this family, the interesting way that law enforcement, and specifically the FBI, how they dealt with this situation and this member of the Colombo family. So let's get into the meat and potatoes, and let's get the pot boiling. And the main event today is episode number 90, The Grim Reaper. Who are we speaking about specifically? Greg Scarpa, which was a captain in the Colombo crime family. Now we start off in his place of birth, Brooklyn, born on May 8th, 1928. Gregory Scarpa was and became a member of organized crime in the mid-50s. But before that, his brother, his older brother, had dealt in as an associate in the Provaci family of the five families of New York at the time. Of course, it was the Provaci family before it became the Colombo family. Brief little history on that. The Provaci family was one of the original families that was created in 1931 by Lucky Luciano and the Commission. And it was the Provaci family all the way up into the 60s. Now, what occurred during that era, there was the Banana Wars, and we spoke about that briefly during the Banana Wiseguy series. And Carlo Gambino, as well as the Lucchese family, they wanted to get rid of Banana because he was plotting with the Provacis to get rid of them. So there was a planned hit Banana was trying to orchestrate against Carlo Gambino and the head of the Lucchese family. And at that time, the hit was given to the Provaci family, and the hit was instilled to a captain in the Provaci family, which was Joe Colombo. Colombo thought about it, counted his beans, and decided, you know what, I'm going to take this information and I'm going to turn it over to the commission. And he did. And as a reward for his good behavior and not carrying out the orders of the Provaci family, Carlo Gambino awarded him as a motion on the commission to become the new head of the Provaci family. And to cement that in gold, they threw out the name Provaci and called it the Colombo family. And in our Wiseguy series, we're going to talk about Joe Colombo in the future. But today we're talking about Gregory Scarpa and how he changed a lot of the aspects of how the FBI worked organized crime cases. Now, as I said, his older brother, Sal Scarpa, had become an associate in the Provaci family and showed young Greg the inner workings of the family. He also became an associate, and he really liked the operation and how it worked. And, of course, back then, in those days, in the 50s, you had to do a piece of work in order to really be highlighted. And he wanted to be highlighted, Greg Scarpa, as a buttman, a hitman. So he carried out a piece of business for the Colombo or the Provaci family at the time and became a made member of the Provaci family. He, like all made members and all crime syndicate individuals, he's out there producing money. And one of the things that he loved to do was hijack trucks. Now, during the age of the late 50s, early 60s, the United States had this interstate crime commerce type of thing going. When you stole merchandise and you crossed state lines to another state, it became a federal crime. So at that time, the FBI was infatuated with those interstate crimes. So the FBI was big on hijacking stuff during that time. And Greg Scarpa got arrested on May 7th, 1960, for hijacking trucks. But he also became, very secretly, when he was questioned by the FBI, a cooperative interest to the FBI. They basically told him, listen, we got you red-handed here. They served a warrant to his house where they found endless amount of materials that were stolen, liquor, cigarettes, and everything else. So they had the proof, and they probably had a couple of rats to go with it. So with little to no persuasion, Greg Scarpa told the FBI, yeah, okay, I'll help you out. I'll give you information every now and then. Now, there was two types of thought here. One, the FBI said, we've got a confidential informant. And then two, Greg Scarpa says, I got a license to steal. Two different idea sets, but this was the element that was in front of him. So in the 60s, he was a cooperative informant to the FBI. And shortly after, he was giving them little tidbits here and there, hijack trucks, and they would show up and arrest everybody and woo, woo, woo. My guess is that he was giving the FBI the competition's loads and getting rid of them and profiting his end even more. Intelligent. Now, another thing that needs to be recalled is that back then there was no RICO statute. So this thing with a cooperative witness was you dealt in certain things. The FBI kind of had like a dumber than dumber attitude of what you might have been doing as long as you're feeding the animal. And the animal in this case being the FBI. Easy trade-off. Now, the FBI has shown us that they are capable of doing a lot more than dealing with some hijacked trucks today.
If you're the police, where are your badges?
So this has been an ongoing thing with the FBI, these deals and negotiations. As I said the last podcast, when our criminal justice system works a deal out with a mass murderer that killed 19 people to walk free, to get rearrested again,
Badges?
that tells you a lot about our criminal justice system.
We ain't got no badges.
So Greg Scarpa now is working for the FBI.
We don't need no badges.
He's doing his thing, and he's up and coming now because he's got an in. Now, of course, he can't tell his buddies over in the mob at the Wimpy's Boys Social Club in Brooklyn because that would not get him a good table in the social club. So he keeps it to himself. He keeps it under wraps. And as a result, he starts to flourish. He becomes an enforcer in the Colombo family and a force to be reckoned with. Now, in the 60s, the FBI concocted this crazy idea that they had an issue that occurred in the South with 3 civil rights activists that had gotten into a situation where they disappeared and then they were discovered dead. So there was a big uproar about that in
I don't have to show you any stinking badges.
society in general, within the media. And there was only, one way to fix that. So the FBI was given the case, and somebody over at the FBI office said, why don't we bring in Greg Scarpa and have him go down south and get some information for us. Now, let's see how this works. You're going to go deep down south where the KKK lives. You, being an American Italian, and you're going to just blend in.
I get it.
Well, stranger things have been seen. But our friend here, Greg Scarpa, does pull it off. And he goes down there, and the FBI documents have recorded him as confidential informant 3461. That's his number, 3461. And they sent them down to obtain information in a case of the civil rights workers. It's also believed that he was working the case of what's known as the Mississippi burning case with the 3 civil rights. And there are a couple other cases he was working too. But anyway, Greg Scarpa goes there. The FBI points to the guy that they want him to kind of intercept. Now, I think here there might have been 2 forms of thinking also. The FBI said, well, you know, he's got a criminal mentality. He knows how to work the system. He'll, talk to this guy, befriend him, and get some information. Well, Greg says, I'm not going to be there all day. I'm just going to juice this guy up and get what I want. And that's exactly what he did. He walked into this individual's place of business, and he was talking to him about some electronics. Said, yeah, I'll show you out back. As they were walking out back, he put a gun to the guy's back, took him out to the back alley, worked him over, and told him to start talking or else. And the guy from the KKK sang like a bird. Greg Scarpa turned that information over to his FBI handler under the control number of 3461, and chirp, 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 and it worked. FBI, years later, I might add, did make a lot of successful arrests in those cases. So Scarpa was working the FBI, and he was working them pretty good. They were asking, he was giving, and his mindset, he was doing one and one thing only. I'm not going to rat on my family, and I'm definitely not going to rat on my crew. Everybody else is fair game here. And he did that. Now, time goes on, starts to evolve, and we go into another time period. And
Then he almost drowned in 3 inches of water.
as Scarpa again, he becomes a capo. And we're talking in the mid-'60s now. This guy was made in the mid-'50s. In the 60s, he was a captain already. And now we're bouncing all the way into 1985 with the big commission case. And Scarpa's in the picture. And he had the Wimpy Boys Social Club in Brooklyn. He was feared by many. And he was a known killer, stone hard man, and no nonsense. Nobody wanted to fool around with him. After the commission case of the 85, remember I told you there was a couple of dates that we had to remember when we deal with the Italian Mafia here. 1931. We've got to deal with eras of 1956, 1957. We've got to look at the 60s when the banana wars and all that. And then we've got to look at the 70s when they started making members, mid-70s, like crazy. And then 1985 with the Great Commission case that knocked out 4 families. The Lucchese's, the Gambinos, the Genovese, and the Colombos. They were knocked out of the park in the 1985 commission case. The Bananos were on timeout. Their leader was in jail already. So the FBI really wasn't concentrating on them. So where Greg Scarpa works this out, the boss at the time of the Colombo family was Carmine Persico, which recently died. And he put an acting captain as an acting boss while he attended to this minor commission case in prison. And he first appointed his brother, but his brother got arrested. His son got arrested. So he ends up appointing Vic Orena, which was a captain in the Colombo family. And he says, you're the acting street boss. Well, Vic, he liked the position so much, the chair was really comfortable. He says, you know what, I think I'm going to keep this. Forget him. He's in prison. And so is his brother and everybody else. So he takes the position, and a war breaks out between the loyalists, the Persico family, and those that were back in Vic Orena's play. Now, there was a consigliere at the time. Remember, we said that the consigliere is the counselor to the boss. He operates as a street boss, too. And he didn't want to get caught in the middle here of this feud. So he thought he'd do a poll and basically said he would bring in the captains to the social club and he would say, you know what's going on. Who do you back? Who do you back? And based on your suggestion or who you picked, he'd take out a little score sheet and he'd mark an X. So he calls Greg Scarpa into the social club And he says, you know that there's a war going on, and Vic Arena's the acting boss, and Persico's in prison. Who do you back? So Scarpa, being an old goat, remember, this is 1986 around there, and he got inducted in about 55. So do the math on that one. So he looks at the consigliere and he tells him, let me think about it. So he goes, okay. I mean, if you have to. He goes, yeah, it's a big decision. Let me think about it. He walks out. So as he's walking out, the consigliere is following him, and he says, Craig, why didn't you just tell me who you're backing? He goes, I really got to think about it. Let me suggest something to you. Never ask me that question in public ever again. Needless to say, several days later, the consigliere was never heard of or seen again. Now, there is a possibility that Greg Scarpa could have had something to do with it. He became a loyalist of the Persico family. He believed in the old form of schooling that he learned. The boss is the boss. And what Vic Arena and the boys wanted to do, he wasn't down with it. So Scarpa, 12 people died, and it is believed that he eliminated personally half of that.
6.
During that war and that skirmish. So he is a force to be reckoned with, and all this time he's flapping the jaws with the FBI. Now, what's interesting in this case is that his original agreement with the FBI is in 1960 before the RICO. Now, RICO's already set in motion, and it's a whole new era, but the FBI is still dealing with Gregory Scarpa like they did in the 50s. Now, the agent that first originally worked the case with him is gone. He's retired now. And a new agent comes in, one called DeVecchio. And he was an up-and-coming agent at the time, and he was assigned to the Colombo family. So he thought he'd make a big grand entrance and go straight to Scarpa's house, park in front of his driveway, stand there. As Scarpa came out and said, "Who in the F are you?" He introduced himself, and he said, "I want you to teach me everything about the FBI." And supposedly the story is that Scarpa said, okay. Well, I don't think the conversation really went down like that. I think that he said, "I'm your next FBI handler." And he said, "Yeah, sure. As long as you don't say those 4 little letters, RICO, I've got no problem." And he kept on talking. But this time, this new agent wasn't as slick as the old one. And so he played him a little bit better. And somehow he abstracted information from him. And some of the information that he got from him resulted in people dying. But we'll get to that in a minute. But one of the things about the Grim Reaper, as he was affectionately called, people feared him. Nobody wanted to mess with him. If anybody that was associated with the mob knew that he was a no fool-around guy. He was very serious. And as a joke, his social club was called the Wimpy Boys Club, and everybody knew that that wasn't the case. But one of the things he did, he would pop aspirin like if they were M&M, knocking out 4, 5, 6 in one shot. That produced some ulcer issues for him. And he eventually, Greg Scarpa, had to get surgery as a result of his abuse of aspirin. So he goes in to get his surgery, but they have to do transfusion of blood. And he said, no. I don't want nobody else's blood. He said, I don't know who they belong to. You're going to get the blood from the people in my crew. So the doctors didn't care as long as they get the blood. But one of the guys in his crew was infected with HIV. As a result, Greg Scarpa ended up obtaining HIV as well. So the Grim Reaper is about to get grimmed. He goes on. He sues the hospital, I believe, and he wins out of court settlement, saying they didn't screen the people properly, and rightfully so. So we're deep into the Colombo War. We're in 1986. The great case had gone by in 85. All these bosses, now the family, had gone to prison, huge vacuums out on the street, but nobody wanted to mess with Greg Scarpa. That was for sure. He knew what he wanted, and he wasn't going to sit back and let anybody manipulate him in any way, especially with the amount of seniority that he had. Now, the Colombo War goes into the 90s, 91, and on one specific day, Scarpa goes out with his crew. They go out to South Brooklyn, and they're looking for certain people in the faction of Vic Orena, and to start whacking them so the numbers are not as even. And they find a gentleman by the name of Vinny Farrugro. And he was, having a good time hanging up Christmas lights. It was December 6, 1991. And they were going to have, a nice Christmas dinner. But Greg had a different idea. He shot and killed him on his landscape as he was putting up the Christmas lights. So no Christmas party for them. Back in 92, he had an issue where his son. And now, by the time 1992 rolls around, the effects of the HIV virus are taking their toll. He's losing weight, and he wasn't of his right mind. But on a specific night, his son comes home, and he's a little upset, and there's a little carrying on going on. And he's sitting in the living room, Greg, and the wife tames from the son, something happened. And he goes, what happened? And the wife tells Greg, somebody robbed your son. What do you mean somebody robbed my son? Nobody robs my son. Well, needless to say, he told his son, get in the car, and they went to go take care of business. Now, where he's pulling up to is some associates of the Lucchese crime family. And even that story is a little wacky as itself, because they're associates, and he's a made member. Not only a made member, he's a captain in a different faction. But needless to say, we'll put that to the side for now. A lot of the information that we're talking about, we're going to place that on the show notes so you can read along. So his son ends up getting robbed, and his son Joey, and he goes with him to this guy's house. And these are two brothers and some other associates in the Lucchese family. And the robbing issue had to do something with drugs. And so Scarpa gets out of the car. He drives up in his Cadillac. They look out the window and they go, oh, God, this guy told his dad. So they one of them had the bright idea, let's all carry guns and go outside and meet him. So as they go outside, he goes, what's this business where you guys robbed my son? No, he owed me money, that this and that, but I don't have any problem, neither do I. So everybody's copping deuces. Nobody had a problem. So he says, all right. He tells his son, come on, guy, get out of the car. Come around the corner here. You two make up. And they made up. Everybody was happy. They're walking away. Everybody's going, they're going back into the house, and his son's getting back in the car. And Scarpa says, obviously, these guys did not go to the old school of mafia like I did. He pulls out his gun and starts whacking away. And the shootout begins. And it's 3-on-1 now. But the old man's hanging pretty tough. But during the gun battle, there was a shot that actually hit him when he was in the driver's seat of the car. Somehow went in his cavity of his nose and exited out his eye, his left eye, and he drove home. He walked home with a shirt covering his eye, bleeding all over the place, went up to the bathroom, family's all screaming, we're going to call an ambulance. He goes, I ain't call nobody. I'm fine. And when he took this shirt off that he had in front of him, his eye was missing. Well, obviously, they told him, you can't just stand there with no eye. You got to go to the hospital. So he did go to the hospital. Of course, police were in on this, and it ended up being a self-defense thing. He pulled the gun on me, and all that. So he couldn't pin it on anybody, so nothing really happened. But the associates from the Lucchese family were protected by the Lucchese family because these three individuals were earners. They were bringing in money. So they weren't going to whack them. And to me, what's a little far-fetched from that is, how did that go down? I don't know. When you're a captain in another family, and these guys are not made, and they're not underground yet, so something's a little fishy on how that went. And I believe that it has to do with the type of offense. And the offense was that they were dealing in drugs. So if Scarpa admitted that this argument with his son was about drugs, I would say, you guys, you're not allowed to be doing that. So he played dumb. So he didn't know what was going on. So it stayed. I'm sure the old man had plans to go back and whack them. But unfortunately, his time is now numbered more than ever. By the time 1993 rolls around, he's weak. The AIDS virus is really taking a toll on him. And they've got him on a bunch of murders. Because one of the mistakes that he made with his handler, Lynn DeVecchio, was that he told his FBI handler that certain information about crews, as I told you, were doing robberies. But now the FBI handler is asking about the specific murders that occurred in the Colombo War. Now, remember, I told you there was up to 12 deaths, and Scarpa was probably responsible for half of that. Well, he's not going to take the blame for it. He's not going to tell this guy it was me. So he knows he's got to come up with something. So he pins on somebody in the crew that, we'll get rid of him. Who cares? And that was the mortal mistake that he made. Remember, the AIDS epidemic, he wasn't thinking straight. And he ends up turning himself in on that move because the FBI arrested the guy that he mentioned, and the guy turned rat. And once he turned rat, that was the end of Scarpa. So by March 6, 1993, there was no other way around it. He pled guilty to 3 murders. And because he pled guilty, he got 10 years. Now, who admits to 3 murders and gets 10 years if this person is not cooperating with the FBI? Of course, while he was serving his sentence, he never did complete 10 years. The following year, on June 4th, 1994, Scarpa dies as a result of the HIV virus, weighing a whopping 56 pounds at his death. So the Grim Reaper got ripped and ended up doing himself in. What's sad is that he says that he was responsible for probably in the area of 50 to 60 murders in his career, and that the FBI knew most of these issues and played stupid and looked the other way. Now, let's go back to his handler, Agent Lynn DeVecchio, which is probably about 80 years old now. But in I believe it was the year 2000, 2004, 2006. And again, I'm going to post this information on 2007 on the show notes so you can read it. He's charged by the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office. The FBI agent is charged with murder. Well, the district attorney of Brooklyn basically said the FBI agent gave Greg Scarpa the address of individuals that turned up dead. Of course, DeVecchio denies this, and the trial goes to court, and a very sloppy case on the part of the district attorney. They did not do a very good case. that could have been by design, but they ended up losing the case, and DeVecchio was acquitted. A lot of the FBI agents. Now, here's the big thing. At the time of his arrest, he is the supervising agent of the New York City office. So, if these weren't alarm bell ringing issues for today, I don't know what is. There's some moral compass issue that's wrong with the FBI. And I don't know what it is. But I can tell you from example, I worked as a range instructor, and they were on a different range from ours, just down the block. And they wouldn't talk to you if you were, they wouldn't piss on you if you caught on fire. They had nothing to say to you. They were arrogant as all out hell. They having a conversation with a regular officer was like underneath them. And a lot of it is what they're trained and taught in their academies. They are kind of brainwashed as they get into the FBI that you're a superior law enforcement officer. You're not the local yokel. Don't trust the local yokel because they're all corrupt and no good. And they start to drink the Kool-Aid and believing it. So it doesn't surprise me, but this case in 2007 was a very eye-opening case that although DeVecchio was set free and the district attorney's office didn't persuade it, I think that the message was sent, and that was that some of the behavior that the FBI have been doing, and in the Grim Reaper's case, as far back as the 60s, when they started wheeling and dealing with DeVecchio, with Scarpa, I believe that that's what really opened up my eyes. That they'll do anything and go to any length whatsoever to get what they want. And it's sad, but it's true. There's something very wrong happening at the FBI. And it's not just, it's a moral compass that whatever the objective is, they will go full steam ahead towards the objective, and they will negotiate with anybody. The district attorney of Brooklyn said that DeVecchio made the deal with the devil in order to get information at any cost, and even to the cost of dead bodies. Of course, it wasn't proven, but it didn't play very well. And it didn't play very well with the FBI over at the headquarters building. They didn't like what they were hearing either. And obviously they had a runaway train on their hands. DeVecchio does retire. He goes to Florida in 1992, opens up an investigative company. He's probably in his 80s now. I'm sure he's well into his glory days in retirement. And I'm not accusing him of this. He was acquitted of it. But what I am saying is, when you deal with these dangerous people, you've got to cross your T and dot your I's. Because somehow, somewhere, somebody believes that the FBI made members in the Colombo crime family, gave them information to whack people. That's some serious stuff. As always, I knew that this information would be mind-boggling to those that hear it in the crime and the Wiseguy series as we continue them. We were talking about the Grim Reaper, Greg Scarpa, captain, and the Colombo crime family. From 55, I believe, is when he was made, all the way up into his death in 1993. This man was a button in the Colombo family, very feared. His nickname tells you everything, the Grim Reaper. And he had a under-the-table relationship with the Federal Bureau of Investigations. And it was so peculiar what was occurring that the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office charged the last FBI handler that Greg Scarpa had a guy by the name of DeVecchio, and charged him with murder. That says a lot, my friends. That says a lot. I hope that you are enjoying the Wiseguy series. We are moving forward on all these. We're having a great time presenting you a lot of these shows. As I said, the numbers are going up, the ratings are going up, and so we're happy about that. People like to hear about bad guys. What can I tell you? So we're definitely going to provide a lot more than just this. We're going to come up with a series of shows on Wiseguy. Now, we're going to switch out a little bit from the Italian Mafia, and we're going to start going into other crime syndicates as well. Now, remember, if you go to our webpage, RadarCopNation.com, and you go to current and upcoming shows on the toolbar on top, a window opens and it shows you our 5 elements of shows. First one is Think Out of the Box, Train Up series, the Sidebar series, which deals with the wacky left, the Roll Call series, the day-to-day operations of law enforcement, and the Wiseguy series. Of course, we're dealing about organized crime. If you go down to the organized crime thing, you'll see a list of shows that we have on there, and those are the upcoming shows that we're going to have. And we're going to have the Genovese, the Lucchese, the Russian mob, the Irish mob, the Mexican cartel, the Chinese mob, the triads, the Yakuza, the Japanese mob, the Greek mob, the Sicilian, Albanian, Colombian, the Outfit, the Philly mob, the Jersey mob, the New England mob, the Mafia, La Ame, which is a criminal enterprise too. Very fascinating how they operate. A lot of them operate with similar functions, but different mentalities, and that's what we examine here on Radar Cop Nation. So, what's up next? Well, we always have surprises for you, but we're going to start dealing in some of our pending shows that we had. So we're going to start diving into weapons. And why? Because the crazy left is at it again, regulating use of force for officers in California. Of course, California is also trying to take every gun out of every U.S. citizen's hands. So we're going to jump into that. And so we're going to keep you on your toes. But episode 91 will take us in the direction where we're going to go in the month of July. As always, folks, it is my honor and my privilege to be your host on Radar Cop Nation. Oh, don't forget, it is so important to continue in prayer, praying for you, most importantly, because without you being saved or salvaged or healed, it's hard to continue praying. Pray for your family, pray for your loved ones, pray for your community, and pray for the agency that serves you. And most importantly, continue in prayer for the great country of ours, the United States of America. This is Alpha Mike. Roger out.
And guide her through the night with a light from above, from the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet.
Show me all right about the hack.
4323, just 1322.